Hey everyone, I thought I'd create a tutorial on how to create an authentic looking emoji since I've been doing this for a decent amount of time and I couldn't really find a tutorial on how to do this on Sketch or on Photoshop. The two apps, generally have a lot of the same features, so I figured that making a tutorial in Sketch would help a number of people who want to make emoji. So let's get right into this. I'm going to start by analyzing the grinning face with big eyes emoji. I think this is a pretty simple emoji, and a lot of the techniques that we learn from replicating this emoji can be used on other emoji. These are the actual components that I figured are necessary to create this emoji. So let's start by just kind of analyzing the emoji from top to bottom. Let's create an artboard like this. You can tap A and drag, holding shift to make it square. And we're going to put a text emoji in there, an authentic original text emoji. So select the artboard, tap T, drag. We're going to center our text here. So make sure the alignment is auto width, centered text alignment. And if you hold Control Command Space, you'll be able to actually put in an emoji with the emoji picker. And that's about a good size. Tap outside of the text box to deselect it, and let's center that emoji about there. Okay, cool. And then now we're going to duplicate this artboard right here. Let's drag it over next to the other one so that we can compare our version and the original side by side. All right, and we'll delete this text box. Okay, so going from top to bottom, let's kind of figure out what aspects of this layer make the emoji look the way it does. And so going from the top, we see here there's a circle, has generally a solid color throughout most of the emoji, except for this border over here. And I believe that this is an inner shadow that goes from the border to the inside, as opposed to an outer normal shadow, which looks like a drop shadow, like it's floating above something. And so if we apply a reddish inner shadow, that should give us this effect on this orange circle. When we go down, we have another circle, and this circle has a gradient going from white to transparent around the middle of the emoji. So let's just start with those two components. Let's click on this artboard, and we're going to create a circle about the same size as the emoji. If you hold Option and Shift before dragging, you'll be able to create a symmetric oval or a circle from the center. So we'll do that until they're approximately the same shape. And to make this more precise, you can actually go here to the Help menu, type in ruler, and you'll be able to enable rulers. We want to create rulers that allow us to align with this actual emoji. So you can just click right here, and you'll have this line. The color of the line might look different based on your settings. And we'll have a line right here, and that looks about right. Then we will adjust our circle to be centered horizontally, hold Shift to drag it out and scale it proportionally. Alright, and now they have the same size. So let's start by actually making the solid part of this color the same as the authentic emoji. So we'll click here. If this style menu is deselected, click on the chevron, click on the color option, and then the eyedropper. This orange is approximated by around the middle of the emoji, so we'll take this color right here. Feel free to take this hex value, and then we're going to go down to the inner shadows option. Press on the plus. We don't want the shadow to be asymmetric, so change the Y offset to 0. And let's change the color. Use the eyedropper tool again. And about this reddish color, this looks about right. We will then increase the blur to about 5. Spread, we can play around with it a bit until we find a number that's good. A spread of, let's see, a spread of about 3 is good here. That's good for now. And then let's try to create this circle, this inner circle right here. We'll create more rulers, so ruler right here for the top of the circle. Really we only need one for the top since this circle has to be centered with the rest of the shape. So let's create this circle. Tap O to create a circle, Option Shift to drag from the center. It's about this big. and drag it to touch the top of that line. Hold shift to proportionally drag it out so that it has approximately been centered with the rest of the artboard. To make sure that it's really centered, we'll click on this button right here to center it, and we'll start applying this gradient. So this gradient goes from white to transparent. We'll click on the color option here. Here's the gradient menu, and we will change the settings so that this color right here is a full white that's opaque, and this color right here is white but transparent. And we don't want the color to range from the top to the bottom. We want it to become fully transparent beyond this point. So we'll drag this point up to about the center of the shape. And you'll see it kind of click. It's hard to see, but there's a horizontal line when you reach the center. Alright, so we have those first two components, and it's starting to look like the authentic emoji. So what's next? We have these eye holes, and they have this kind of three-dimensionality to them, but you don't need a 3D modeling tool to make them look this way. It's just a cleverly applied shadow. So it looks like we have an orange oval. We have a black inner shadow, or sorry, not an orange oval, a brown oval, a black inner shadow, and it seems that there's this light yellow outline at the bottom. Hard to tell if there's an outline border around the top, but we'll play around and see if we can. We'll play around with the settings and see if we can make it look like it does here. So it might be easier to actually create this oval right above this emoji. So I'll tap O, drag over it, and then we're going to zoom in and adjust these control points to make the oval approximately the same shape and same size. All right, keep in mind that we're going to have a border around this oval. The aliasing here is a bit hard to work around. Okay, so now we have an oval, and let's start by copying over the colors. So we'll click on the color selection item, click on the eyedropper, and we'll sample this brown right here. We'll give it an inner shadow again, but this time it will be black, and it seems that the shadow is darker in this area, so the Y should be positive number, but maybe not this much. So about this number. You can play with the actual opacity of the color and the blur. It seems that the blur is a little bit higher in the actual emoji. Maybe the spread should go up and the blur should go down. You really have to experiment to get it to look precisely like an actual emoji, but I found a blur of 4 and spread of 0 to be just fine. And maybe changing the opacity to a slightly higher value, like so. Alright, and then the last step is actually making a yellow border around the bottom. So we'll click again here, enable borders, and we'll click on the color option here, gradient, and we want the gradient to be a light yellow at the bottom. So select this control knob, use the eyedropper again, and we're going to sample this light yellow color right here. The top here is approximately transparent. Let's go back to this gradient. We can add in other colors into this linear gradient. So if you click right here, we'll add a new control point. We want this to be fully transparent yellow. So we're going to copy the yellow that we used here for this center color, but we're going to make it transparent, so that the transition is still yellow but towards transparency. And then the top color over here seems to be a very light but transparent orange, and so we're going to try to recreate that color ourselves, like so. Let's see here. It's a very light orange color. Oh yeah, and we do need to change the border so that it is an outer border. We want it to be on the outside of the actual shape. That way it's not, the transparency isn't showing the eye through it. And so the border is a bit too thick. If you hold Option in Sketch, you're able to decrement numbers by smaller values. So with this text box selected, hold Option and use the arrow key down to increment or decrement the border width. 0.7 looks good. And then let's duplicate this eye. Command C, Command V to paste, drag it over here so we have the right distance between the eyes, and then use Shift, hold Shift to select both eyes, and then Command G to turn them into a group. Alright, so I'm going to click Command X to cut, select this artboard, and then Command V to paste into this artboard. And they do seem to be aligned properly. Alright, so now that we've done that, let's look at the mouth. The mouth does seem to have the same kind of effect with a brown color and a black inner shadow. So we could just try to take this oval that we just created and stretch it out to the size of the mouth. That might be hard though, because the control points of this oval are hard to work with. And so let's try to actually start with a rounded rectangle and just apply the same effects. So if you tap U, you'll create a rounded rectangle. Let's make it about the size of the mouth, centered with the artboard. Center it so that you get this vertical grid line. And if you double click on this shape, you'll see these control points right here that let you modify the position of the corners. And you can add new control points by hovering your mouse over the edges of the shape, like so. So I'm going to undo that and undo that. And we're going to make this shape transparent so we can see through what we're doing. So transparency of about 46%. We'll reselect the shape and we'll start by adding our control points for the middle of the mouth. So move the mouse around a bit. Once you click, you'll create a control point, drag it down to around the top of the mouth. We'll create another control point here just so we can lock this position. Make sure you're using these guidelines to help you center these points. And then we're going to move this control point about here. And this one to approximately here. Notice how there's a horizontal line near my mouse that shows me that these two control points are now on the same line. I'm going to drag it out a bit more. Alright, they look about identical. Now these corners are too wide, so we can actually change the corner radius right here. I don't want to change it for one of them, so I'll deselect that. I'll reselect the shape, and I'll change the corner radius to a much sharper value. It can be hard to work with. Sketch is not a perfect tool. Alright, and then we'll move those control points again. Here and here. And we might not need this control point at all, so let's delete it and delete this one, and we'll create new curved ones. So we'll click here and drag out. We can use these lines to control the curvature around the control point, or we can make the control point not have this line so that it's a sharp corner. Play around with it a bit until we get this nice curvature. We want to increase the curvature here. And we're going to quickly notice that it's hard to create a symmetrical shape when you're doing so much fine-tuned control. And so we're going to actually split this shape in half so that we can make sure that both sides are symmetrical. Adjust this corner just a bit more, and that looks fine. Let's make the opacity back to 100% so we see the shape and find any potential issues with the curvature. Double click this to take it from a sharp point to a smoother point. Drag it down a little bit. And maybe adjust this corner right here. Alright, that looks good to me on the right half. So what we're going to do is split this into two pieces. And to do that, we can work with, I guess, layer operations. We're going to create a rectangle by tapping R, drag this rectangle to cover the first half, and you'll notice that there's a line right here through the middle of the mouth that shows us that the edge of the square or the rectangle is splitting the shape in the middle. Let go to create that shape, and then hold Shift to select both the mouth and the rectangle. If you go up here to this option, you can click subtract. If you don't see this in your toolbar, you can go here to help and type in subtract. And so that's the operation we want to perform. If we subtract like so, That didn't work because the rectangle is behind the shape, so let's make sure it's above. I'm going to click forward a few times, select both again, subtract, and there we go. We have one half of the mouth. We're going to flatten it to turn it into one single layer. Command C to copy, Command V to paste. Now we have two mouths. To flip it along the vertical axis, click on this button right here. Drag it over so that the two halves are just touching at the edge. And then we're going to select both again. So again, hold Shift and click to select another item, another layer. Then we're going to click on Union to combine them and flatten. Flatten will turn them into a single shape. And you'll notice some issues where at the uniting edge there is somewhat of a sharp corner. Just delete that edge or that corner right there. Now we have a smoother transition there. Same goes for this location right here. And that approximately looks like the mouth. You could go and spend more time to make it look even more precise, but for now, you get the idea. So let's change the color inside the mouth to a brown color. We'll click here on the fill, eyedropper tool, take that brown, and then again we're going to go down to inner shadow. We want to make that shadow a bit bigger, so increase the blur a bit. Maybe the spread by a small amount. Let's increase it by 0.2, 0.3. And maybe decrement the Y or increment the Y by just a little bit. Make that 1.2. It seems that the shadow is a bit darker, so we'll change the opacity of the shadow. Click on the color option here. Drag this a little bit to the right. And that looks good. And then there's this outline, this yellow border again. So we're going to go down here to the borders, enable them, make them based on a gradient. The bottom color, selecting this knob, we want it to be about this yellow right here. And the top, we could probably manage to make that a very, very faint orange. So we're going to decrease the opacity down here to a very low value. And again, you're going to have to make sure that the border is on the outside. So select this option right here. The border is too thick, so let's use option down to decrement until we see a good thickness. That looks good to me. And there we have the mouth, approximately. We could try to stretch it a little bit. Okay, and so now we're going to Command X to cut, select the other artboard, Command V to paste. Now we have this other mouth. It does look a bit terrifying. You might notice a bit of irregularities here. That can be fixed later. And now we have the teeth. So the teeth appear to have a gradient going from white or near white in the middle to grayish colors on the left and right ends. To create this shape, we could just start with a rectangle. So tap R, drag it to be about the same shape. We're going to make it a little transparent to make it easier to edit. Double click on the shape. Or actually first let's center it again. Click here to center it. Double click on the shape, create a control point, drag it to make sure it's centered, then bring it down to the bottom of the teeth. One on top. And we want to match this corner right here with the corner here, and this corner right here with the corner here. Don't mind that we're missing this edge right here, we'll fix that later. We'll bring this corner right here, and this corner right here. And then we can modify the curvature here so that we cover more of this white. So if you click on this control point, we can drag this point to increase the curvature, like so. On the top, it seems that we might need to decrease the curvature a bit. So let's see what happens. Nope, that's too much. We'll increase the curvature. Alright, there we go. I think that looks somewhat accurate. Then we have to have this rounded aspect of the mouth. So we're going to add sharp corners here and here. And right here and here on the sides of this corner. Double clicking on this corner will make it a rounded corner. We're just going to bring it in a little bit just so it becomes a rounded corner right here, like so. We can change its style to have different curvatures or disconnected control points, which allows us to be a little more precise with these corners and have different curvatures on either side. Zooming out, it does seem a bit irregular, so I'm going to move the control point a little closer in. I'll take it back to a connected version. And that looks like a decent transition right there. Okay, we'll repeat that process in the top left corner. We'll double click here and just play around with it until it has a decent curvature that doesn't look weird. Okay, that looks fine to me. So we don't really want to repeat doing this process on the right, since they're not going to be the same. We're going to have irregularities that make the right side not match the left. So we're going to create another rectangle. Make sure its edge is centered on the center of the mouth. And then we're going to subtract. Hold Shift to select both. Subtract. Command C, Command V to paste another mouth. Flip the mouth. Bring it over. Make sure the edges are touching. Select both again. And then we're going to click on Union, and then flatten to make them one shape. And that looks right to me. Then let's work on this white gradient. So we're going to bring the opacity back to 100%. Apply a linear gradient. We don't want it to be vertical, so we'll use this little arrow here to rotate it. And we're going to add another color point right here to the middle. This point is going to be just pure white. On either side, we're going to have a gray. Let's say it's about this color. That looks right to me. CA, CA, CA is a good hex value. Click on this one and adjust its color to be the same. Command V to paste that number in there. And that mouth looks about the same. And it seems that there's a white border around the inside of the teeth, so we're going to apply that as well. Let's go down here to enable borders. This border does seem to be on the inside in this case. It's a small white border. The width might be around 0.5. And this border color is a form of white that is transparent. It does seem to show some of the grayness through it over here. So we'll decrease the opacity like so. And that looks about right to me. Or maybe adjust it a little more. It might be the case that the middle color is not a perfect white, since some white does show around the edge here. Hard to say. But you can work with these values later to make it look more precise. Alright, and so now we're going to copy these teeth over to this mouth right here. We're going to drag it up just so it has the right offset from the top of the mouth. There we go. Now there's something else missing in this emoji, and it's this shadow here, this dark color near the bottom of the emoji. It seems that it's darker near the bottom than on the top, and it gives it this nice kind of curved look. It's because the light over here doesn't go all the way to the bottom, and this part is darker because it's being occluded by, I guess, the top curvature of the face. And so to recreate that effect, I figured that a circle above the main circle with a gradient would look fine. So let's create another circle here. Hold Shift to drag it out and keep it scaled with an aspect ratio of 1:1. And then we're going to move it backwards until it's behind the eyes and the white circle. Alright, and then now we're going to make it have a gradient. The top color should be completely transparent. There's no evidence of this shadow at the top. So we're going to make it a transparent black. And the bottom is about a reddish, blackish, transparent color, it seems. So we're going to take that down all the way to this valley right here. And we're going to move this control point down here to make sure that this shadow doesn't creep up to the top. We still need to adjust this shadow just a bit more. So we'll increase the opacity. Maybe make the color a little darker or a little redder. And that seems to potentially work. It could also be that we have an inner shadow going from the outside of the circle. So let's try turning off of this fill and applying an inner shadow where the Y is negative and the blur is fairly large. Let's make that Y more negative. Increase the spread and decrease the opacity way down. This color could be a bit more red. It seems like there's somewhat of a red tinge to it. Perhaps a bit orange. Let's try increasing the blur. Making it a little more red. And there we go. That seems to approximate this emoji. And for now, that's all I'll show you in terms of trying to replicate an emoji. You could play with these color values a bit more to get even more precise, but this appears to be how these emoji are created for the most part. You just need to increase the shadows in some areas, but this is how to create the grinning face with Big Eyes Emoji. A lot of features of other emoji work very similarly. It's just a few simple layers that look 3D. For example, this eye drop or this sweat drop here seems to just be two different shapes. They have a conical shape with a curved bottom, the control point like this. And this one has a gradient going from more opaque to transparent at the bottom. And kind of look for shadows like this shadow right here, where this shadow is simply a shape that has a very transparent color. And that's it for creating a custom emoji with Sketch. Thanks for watching.